Welcome to Austin Stories. First up, OP destroys the HOA so badly that I won't spoil it, you'll have to wait and see what my comments are. And then next up, OP takes out HOA Karen's quack doctor license. That's nuclear. Also, all the stories are available in podcast format. Search for the Austin Stories podcast or check out the link in the description. Here we go. I fought the HOA and I won. Posted by This One Time on Reddit. This story takes place in Ontario, in the city of Kawartha Lakes, one of the worst municipalities in all of Ontario in which to live. There's poverty, crime, drug addiction, a culture of prideful ignorance, and die-hard partisan voters that'll vote against their best interests time and time again. And if you paid attention to the news recently, their OPP detachment shot and killed a 1-year-old. The city council are looting their tax base to provide free educational opportunities for unqualified staffers they hired, holding secret meetings behind the public's back, and in one case spent $140,000 to fight a lawsuit that was levied against them after they blocked a brand new business's access road because some city council members owned competing businesses. They were fined $70,000 and spent another $70,000 of taxpayer dollars to appeal and lose. That's all backstory. Suffice it to say, it's a city run by uneducated rubes and inhabited by the most apathetic voters I've ever encountered. My old man was an original property owner of the unassumed road for 50 plus years. For the uninitiated, this means that although the city owned the road, they are not responsible for maintenance and grooming and so on beyond the scope of the limited service agreement that they made with a single property owner who, we later found out, forged signatures claiming he represented the entire road. The LSA basically meant that they would do 2 gradings per year, though they only actually provided 1. About 20 years ago, some cityots, or city idiots, moved up on the road and decided that they would create an HOA. They didn't get insured, they didn't incorporate, and they thought they could go around forging signatures on city documents and charging residents money for, well, essentially nothing. It all came to a head about 10 years ago. My dad refused to pay them until the 2 chuckleheads in charge showed him how they spent the money. Rather than provide a fair accounting of the neighborhood funds, the president and the treasurer both decided they wanted to sue for the money owing. Well, we went to court, and it turns out that you don't just get to declare yourself the head of an association that doesn't exist. Turns out you can't collect money from their residents and spend it on cookware and paying their unqualified, uninsured friends to do road work. Turns out perjury is frowned on in a small claims court. They found out the hard way. I discovered in their court filings examples of perjury, fraud, and general dishonesty. They manufactured documents and got caught doing so. They were given multiple options to settle in court, but turned them all down, instead choosing to self-destruct in the most absurd and stubborn way available to them. None of their witnesses showed up. They brought literally no evidence with them to court, instead relying on the phrase, "It's not rocket science," and they somehow assumed the judge would accept "it's not rocket science" as some kind of evidence, or as somehow lending credibility to their claims. He didn't. The HOA lost and ended up owing us money. The HOA dissolved immediately afterwards, and if the story ended there, it would make sense, but not be a very interesting story. But you're not here for just a good guys win story, you want satisfaction. Turns out, one of those 2 old men that fancied themselves in charge of the HOA could not accept defeat. Our driveway lights started to disappear, and someone was blocking the culvert in the middle of the night and washing out the road in front of my dad's house. Minor vandalism was happening almost on a nightly basis. So I came home late one night, and sure enough, this 70-year-old moron is thrashing about in the April temperature swamp, having fallen in after blocking the culvert. He's got his shirt tangled in an underwater branch and can't get out. We had to haul him out because he was so drunk and suffering from hypothermia that he couldn't even move. Then we called the cops. He got yelled at, trespassed, and no driveway lights ever went missing again. And the cops let me keep the trash can lid that he was using to block the culvert. Free lid. Moral of this story is, don't take crap off an HOA. They may look official, but I'll bet you most HOAs are doing something shady that'll reflect poorly on them in court should you find yourself at odds with them. I just do not know in what universe you think it will work to create an organization and just do all the things that are red flag central. They don't just have a red flag flying in front of their house. They bought the whole freaking red flag store franchise, the dang thing in their backyard, and own the whole shady place, right? Well, I don't know what they're thinking. I think maybe they thought this was like a pyramid get rich quick scheme, just going to fancy up and draw up a little HOA, right? And then just say, oh, we're going to just fine people for crap that just doesn't even make sense, and we're just going to come out of nowhere. And you follow me how this makes absolutely zero sense, but to them, it was the brightest idea in the world in their own little dingy, dense minds. OP, you did great not taking up their crap and then just hanging on to yourself knowing that it was just all a farce, and you just nailed it. Way to go, OP. HOA next door tries to enforce their rules on me. Try again, fool. Posted by Correct Campaign 3707. I purchased my house in 2015. Not even a thought of an HOA in the village. At the time, my neighbors were the cemetery to the west, 5 acres of woodland to the north, neighbor's house 200 feet away to the east, and south, frontage onto a secondary highway with land dropping off on the far side. Ideal location for compromising Hub's mentality of middle of nowhere, antisocial stance, and my wanting at least neighbors within screaming distance. Fast forward to 2021. Land parcel to the north sold to some numbered company. Then, the one neighbor we had listed his house for sale. As discovered after the fact, Mark sincerely apologized when he realized what happened. The same company bought his house and land in early 2022. They raised his house and outbuildings and applied for residency. So far, nothing concerns me. Well, they start subdividing the land for lots, applied to have road allowances and water services. No wastewater service available, cause, rural village. This means, to those not familiar, that they have to allow square footage on the lots for a septic system, which for a 2-bed, 2-bath house is minimum 750 square feet with a specific setback from the adjacent property lines. Also, the township that I live in has no requirements for fence permits, just height rules. So for the front line of the house line, it's 4 feet, and versus backyard is 6 feet, and you may not install the fence over the property line, and unless agreed upon in writing prior to fence installation, it may not be installed on the property line with the adjoining neighbor being responsible for cost and/or maintenance. Well, so far, I have been given notice of: first, a variance application to have the 2 houses planned next to me have their septic beds closer to my property line than the township bylaws allow. And next, a legal notice to allow fencing to be built on the property line with half the linear cost be assigned to my address. I got a notice from the developer's lawyers that I, as an adjacent property, will be required to abide by their neighborhood aesthetic requirements, which comes down to rules on houses and garage and outbuilding colors, vehicles allowed on the property, and colors of the flowers allowed in publicly visible flower beds, which are red, white, and blue only. Excuse me? I live in Canada. Red and white maybe, but blue? Yeah, right, try again. I bought this house without deed restrictions. My name is, it's Karen. I am the original 1967 version. My mother had a premonition about the bee witch I would grow up to be, so bring it on. Update, the township council meetings are on the 15th of each month. Last night I attended, as this was when the variance application for the development next door was to be discussed and decided on. I sat through 2 very boring hours of other township business, and when it came to the developer's turn to explain why they needed the variance, it came down to because the septic beds would need to be raised due to water table heights. Moving the septics further back on the lots would allow additional flat area between the houses and the septic beds so that future homeowners would have more room to install things like an above-ground swimming pool. So for those not familiar, putting a swimming pool on a septic bed is a really bad thing. The first question the council asked after the developer went through their arguments, any objections of this variance request? I stood, voiced my objections. These are quarter-acre lots. It's not a space issue, and wanting more room for toys is not a valid reason for a variance for an item that could have environmental impact on my property. Variance denied. This right here is a perfect example of the HOA thinking with like half their brain, which is really like the only part of the brain that they have, and they're thinking this is what we want to do, this is how it's going to work, and then OP comes in with a full brain, see here, HOAs don't have that, and she's like, all right, well, this is clearly not going to work. You're not going to put a pool over a septic tank, which is a horrible idea. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you why, you know why, and then all these other things, putting that by this property too close to that, and just coming in with bravery. HOAs will pick on you and basically try to force you and scare you into going with what they want to say, but when you know the rules, and so do I, you have that full commitment that I'm thinking of, and you would not get this from any other OP. Way to go, OP, and please tell me you caught that reference in the comments below. Way to go. Neighbor kept reporting me to the HOA for petty things. Opportunity knocked to pay her back, and I took it. Posted by Aramaris Macon. I found out today that my revenge was complete, so I came here to share it. My neighbor, who we shall call Christy, would report us to our HOA for literally everything that she didn't like. Trash can still on the street at 5 p.m. on trash day? Reported. Kids bike outside while kids are still playing? Reported. Didn't mow the lawn this weekend? Typically I do this on Monday nights. Reported Monday morning. Dog barking at 2 in the afternoon as she and her dog walk on the path behind our house? Reported. In many cases, these were not issues covered by the HOA, but due to repeated reporting, the board did fine us, and I had to go spend the evening waiting through a 2-hour meeting to have them removed. This kept happening and was driving me nuts. Both my wife and I spoke to her and tried to find out why she felt this was okay, and she told us, you need to just do a better job at being a good neighbor. Fast forward to early this summer. She posts on a neighborhood website sharing a video about the anti-vax movement. In general, the replies are pretty aggressive about telling her she's full of it, but she keeps pushing back, leading to a super long post about how we are all wrong and we should listen because she is a doctor. She signs it, Dr. Christie last name, naturopathic physician. At this point, I'm mostly just wondering what the heck any kind of doctor would be against vaccines. This made no sense to me, so I started digging. I did find that Christie was listed as a doctor on sites where you could find physicians. I dug into more of what exactly a naturopathic physician was and found out that in my state of Colorado, they are regulated and required to maintain a license to practice. I checked into it and found out the following. Firstly, Christie was not in the state database as a naturopathic physician, and 2, the board who regulates it has an online reporting tool. At this point, I took all the information I had, grabbed screenshots and checked my timeline and reported her as claiming to be a naturopathic physician when she was not. I then followed that up with this post on the neighborhood website. I said, this is a hot button topic for me, and because of that and Christie signing her post as Dr. Last Name, I had to dig some. I, for one, am a huge fan of including whole person treatment. I think doctors of osteopathic medicine are wonderful as they work to integrate whole health into the picture with well-researched medical best practices. Naturopathy less so, which is the problem here. One researched article here breaks down a lot of the issues quite well. It is almost 13 years old, but still quite good at explaining the valid concerns. I further checked as Colorado does regulate naturopathy, and I could not find any Christie last name listed there. My thought was that it is entirely possible that she holds a license to practice in Colorado and my search wasn't working. But even just searching her first name or zip code or my town or the town near us provides no results for a Christie last name. There are 2 naturopathic doctors in town near us, and I used this search. At this point, Christy locked the post and later deleted the entire thing. I was pretty dang happy that she removed the post, but today it got better. In the mail, I received a copy of the cease and desist letter that Christy received from the state about a month ago. It told her that she must cease and desist her practice immediately. Okay, look, I know this is a pro-revenge HOA story, but this is beyond nuclear, and here is why. It's so funnily ironic. You have someone that reports people for not even HOA-related stuff. It's little minor stupid things that she's doing just to be petty, right? Petty revenge style, when there is no revenge to OP. And then OP is like, all right, we're going to go get back at them. So they look, and the doctor that this person claims to be is not actually an office that they hold. They do not have the licensing, the registration, the proper approval from the state that requires it to practice this doctor title. So they go in and literally get a letter from the government saying they have to cease and desist the practice. That is huge to rip that out from under Christy's feet because she just would not stop doing that. And someone in the comments had mentioned that the HOA might not allow this practice anyway, so the very thing that she is using for her power to try to take down OP was being used against her to destroy and ruin her being. OP? Holy freaking crap, man. That's brutal. The HOA breaks into my house and garage. I expose their fraud, cost them almost $1 million and bankrupt them. Click the video on your screen. You don't want to miss the insane fallout, and I'll see you in that next one.